Chris, welcome to PLUSnxt Talking Tech in this rainy day in Chicago at RELFest 2025. I wanted to ask you, you could tell everyone how you got started in eDiscovery and tell us your story.
Yeah, I think most people say they fell in backwards to eDiscovery.
Sure.
And I think I actually attempted to get into eDiscovery, but I went to law school knowing I would not practice law. So I'll give you the short version of how I got there.
Okay.
I went to college in Pittsburgh and we built a system that collected behavioral health reporting information. And the university kept all of that information on their internal servers. And I remember telling my professor, and this is in the early 2000s, so HIPAA was already in place. I remember telling my professor, it seems like we're keeping a lot of pretty sensitive information. And he's like, oh yeah, you wouldn't believe how much data is exploding and, where this data is going to go and what's legal and what's not legal. I hope the statute of limitations is run for Carnegie Mellon and they wouldn't be in trouble for holding that information.
Sure.
But we were doing it for a nonprofit, like I mentioned. And so they just didn't have the space and we did. So we built that system and it actually got me thinking about electronic discovery and how that data, could, needed to be protected, but could be at issue down the road. And so that shuffled me towards law school. And like I mentioned, I said I went to law school knowing I would not practice law. So I started out at a company called Charles River Associates. They became CRA and back and forth. And I actually did legal business consulting in 2007, 2008, which was, I think, ahead of its time. Unfortunately, the economy was not ahead of its time, and I'm hoping we're not dipping into that. But so I worked there for a couple of years, did some contract legal work, and then actually joined Barrick right after that. So I've been at Barrick for 13 or 14 years now.
Okay. So you've been doing this for a while, and you have a more of a technical background plus legal background, which is kind of unique. What keeps you in eDiscovery? I mean, there's probably a lot of things pulling you in other directions, maybe, or trying to entice you. What keeps you in eDiscovery?
I think it's the challenge, and I think that's a cliche, but I think it's actually true. I remember my first day when I started at the firm. I'm old enough to remember receiving a backlog of CDs of data that was not loaded into our summation database, and I thought, man, I'm going to do this all day. This is tricky. I had not used summation before. I was learning a new tool. I was learning how to do that. And I would say there are some days that I pine for getting some CDs and only having to load, fix some find and replace on some DII files and upload that because I think it's the challenge of having to try new things, learn new things. A simple example would be when we have a client document collection call, they're inevitably going to mention some technology that you or I may have never heard of. And,
Right.
and I feel like if we're stacking nerds, you and I are probably pretty high on the tech nerd list.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. And at first I could feel kind of the, sweaty hands. Oh, what am I going to say about this technology? I don't know what this is. And what I realized is you just have to ask the right follow-up questions and make sure, kind of like we're discussing now, what do you do with that? How does it work? And that led you to what that system does and whether you might be able to get data out of that system. And inevitably there'll be a call like that in the next week or two where there's a new system and it's cloud-based likely.
Right.
And it's some version of Salesforce fill in the blank. And we need to figure out how we get data out of that. So I think it's that challenge of trying to learn these new things and how we actually, work with those systems and get data from those systems.
I always love the puzzle. I've been doing this for 20 years now, 21 years. It's both the technology that the clients are using that we have to respond to as an industry, and there's a lag, right?
Yep.
And your ability to ask informed, intelligent questions of things you don't know about comes from experience and knowledge and your training, and it's always asking the next informed question. I love doing, those scoping calls for collections that I started doing that over 20 years ago. That was kind of one of my specialties that I still enjoy doing. And it's, I think, and we'll get into AI in a second, but I'll preface it with this, is I think with the use of AI tools, and we'll see AI move across to the left hand of the EDRM, but I think with eDiscovery and AI tools, knowing how to talk to your clients about their network and their data and what they used to have, not just today, their cloud system, but that archaic thing that they sunsetted, but still have copies of that they forgot about, is important, right? So
Yeah. Well, sorry to jump in. I would say to your point, we're in October playoff baseball now.
Sure.
And we seem to have some mutual teams that we root for. I will say I was at an opening round game, which it was nice to see the Brewers not have to play in that series for once, since we lose in that opening round all the time.
Sure.
But I'll get to the point of it. The point is that I went with a friend, and his wife works for a large, trust company that we would all know the name of. And she said, the legacy systems, because she works in InfoGov and security, right? And she was saying, well, we have two ways we can go on most of these systems. We can continue doing this, right? And how much of our business operates on this? Because this system can't be updated. And we literally can't find, because I think later we'll talk about how maybe jobs change with generative AI. They literally can't find coders that develop this system. So what do we do? And I think it kind of informs how you approach a business. Because even in just another quick background thing, I mean, even in college, I interned at a fintech company associated with a bank that, again, you would recognize from inside the cheddar curtain, as I like to say, up in Wisconsin. And we helped take their fat client system to a web-based system. And, this is 2001, 2002. So,
Sure.
Feels like archaic that they didn't have that at the time, but also felt kind of forward. And as we were taking the requirements from those people, one, just kind of where people click and how they use it, it's like, well, why would you do that? And it's like, that's how they use their system, right? We think in a perfect world, it would operate one way, and it turns out it operates many ways. And so I think that kind of informs how this works, because even on the pre-calls before talking to custodians, how often do you talk to IT and they say, oh, yeah, this is locked down, Yammer's not a thing, or, whatever chat application they're using. And then when you talk to the custodians, they say, oh, yeah, the main way we communicate is over Yammer, or whatever it is, and I'm just using an illustrative technology, but it is funny how it's a expectations gap or maybe a knowledge gap, and not because I think anybody is trying to be mischievous. I'm sure there are instances where that is the case, but usually it's not people trying to be mischievous. It's just, these are the systems we have, this is what we use, and you have to go find it.
Right. Yeah, I always love that shadow IT, those questions, because you talk to the council, then they say, no, we don't have that. You talk to IT, the CIO, the director of IT, we don't have that. And then, as you said, you get into talking to the custodians. They're like, oh, yeah, we bought that because we have this need, and I just expense it on my credit card. And it's only like, I don't know, $200, $300 a month. And you're off to the races going down a whole new path, right? Let's get into AI. It's like the topic of the moment here at RailFest. What do you think is going to be the big change for you in the work you do as AI becomes more prevalent across the firm or across the industry?
So I actually see that as an opportunity. I mean, you asked earlier what's one of the reasons I stay doing this or in this area, and I have considered other paths or other things to do, and I actually find the generative AI or AI in general, which I feel like is reductive to say, but
Sure.
I find AI is actually empowering people. Again, I think it will change jobs, but since we were talking about banking, friend, when they came up with ATMs, the theory was that bank tellers were going to go away. Well, it turns out they actually needed more bank tellers or people to do different jobs around servicing clients. I think the same thing applies in AI. Where that lands, if there's any chance it met the hype, I think that's not the case, right? So I think the ceiling isn't as high as we think, but I also think the floor is much higher. And what I mean by that is I think it actually provides an opportunity for a firm like mine to go after engagements down the road once we're conversant and using some of these technologies to go get engagements that we wouldn't have previously gotten. Because for better or worse, we can't throw people at the problem. And I don't mean that as cheesy to say. I mean, case teams at our firm are typically a handful of individuals.
Sure.
And we try to leverage the technologies that we've licensed so that we can handle those matters efficiently as possible. And it, again, comes off as self-serving for a firm like mine to say this, but if we could save clients money and get more engagements, by doing things more efficiently, we're going to leverage those technologies. I think what we're trying to figure out right now is what are those technologies and what are the costs associated with them? And maybe when I say costs, I should do this, but what are the costs associated with them and where can those benefits be derived to handle the matters more efficiently, to provide a either faster or more repeatable way of handling them, and then also just to deliver client results. Because I think clients come back to you because you deliver the services that they expect, right?
Right.
So I think it's a way to do that more efficiently and hopefully more cost effectively. I think we're in that, I guess we'll keep with tired sports analogies. I think we're in the, first or second inning of this, where we're going to hear a ton of announcements this week. And I think I always want to run a tracker on that, like which of the announcements last year were paid off this year, right?
Sure.
So which announcements tomorrow will be paid off? Is it 2025, 2026, or beyond?
Right. I think you really touched upon, this is the biggest change in technology, I think, since the adoption of the internet in the 90s. And really, it takes that lifelong learners in eDiscovery to push their careers forward by getting new skills. And really, when I talk to mid-size and boutique law firms, I think you touched upon a really important piece where Rel 1 and AI can allow them to be more, to leverage their people in a different way and to take their people and multiply their experience and their expertise in a way that's very different. And because they're not giant law firms with bureaucracy, they may have an easier way of adopting it than through multiple committees and initiatives and hiring outside consultants to decide for the firm what they should do. So I think there's a ability to pivot for smaller, mid-sized boutique firms. We talk to, at Plus, we talk to those type of firms all the time about business solutions, building your program, how to do that. I think that's a thing that the AI piece of it takes to a different level, right? And allows to take the case team, and I always tell people, it augments the work your best people do, theoretically and practically.
Yeah, I think you're right. And sometimes it's about just making sure that we're communicating on the same language. I mean, a very simple example I would give is in law school, I interned for a word salad of a organization called the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority.
Wow.
What they provided were digital fingerprint scanners for every county in the state of Illinois. What we found out on a roadshow was that nobody used those scanners. And the purpose of them were if a crime was committed in Cook County and then spilled over into DuPage County, which are, collar counties to each other. Chicago's in Cook County, and I now live out in, I jokingly say to my wife, Iowa, but DuPage County. They could share that information. Well, it turns out they weren't sharing that information because they, one, did not update their hardware. And then two, they didn't have a data map that allowed them to communicate. So what would be thumbprint on your left hand was different in each system. And they came pre-configured, but people updated them.
Right.
They kind of did their own thing. And so what we did, which was very simple, and again, this feels like baseline stuff, but I think sometimes this informs, future builds, is we just came up with a data map where all the fields that were shared were named this. We pushed that out. And by push that out, I think we probably went with a thumb drive or a CD and updated all the systems. And then that allowed all of these systems to communicate with each other. And sure enough, a year later, I checked in with the people that I interned for that summer, and they're like, yeah, systems are up and running. People are using it. It was one of those things where it feels like a baseline simple thing, but sometimes it's again, in the custodian interview, you're talking to them about how they actually use it, and it informs that they're not using it and why they aren't.
Do you think that eDiscovery people inside law firms and corporations are uniquely prepared and situated to help drive AI adoption?
Yes. I think saying no would be would undercut. I get in trouble with everybody at the conference, but the reason why I think it is that there's only so many hours in the day, right? And people want to do. Obviously, we want to provide a good service to the firm, but I think people want to come up with ways that they can, instead of manually affixing a bait stamp, which I did at the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority, we can do that digitally. And so I think we'd want to use that. So when there are opportunities to come up with something, and I think the example you gave was a custodian or an employee going out and purchasing some piece of software that would make their job go faster, they do that because they're trying to help the organization. Now, I'm sure there are fringe cases where they're not helping the organization and they're doing something that enriches themselves. But I by and large like to think that people are trying to do the right thing, and they're doing this in furtherance of either handling their job more efficiently or helping the company,
Right.
or some combination of those two, which I think is where it gets back to, do eDiscovery professionals want to do that? For sure. Now, do I want an agentic AI bot to take my job tomorrow? Probably not. Is that going to happen tomorrow? Also, probably not.
Sure.
But I mean, it's an interesting thought exercise from a what kind of everyday rote activities could, in fact, be streamlined by coming up with a way that we could have an agent that did some of those things.
Yeah, no, there's a huge area for automation across the EDRM, across different types of legal services, from even things that aren't related to litigation or eDiscovery, even marketing for law firms, or client notifications when there's new suits and things that bring you closer to your end client. Now, we're at Relativity Fest. What are you? Our last question here. What are you looking forward to seeing here this week?
So, can I answer with two different things?
Please.
Yeah. The main thing would be, the announcements are interesting, and I think that's great. And what's on the quote unquote roadmap is obviously informing where things are going. I would say the much more important part, and we had a call before we recorded this, which I think we set for a half hour and talked an hour and a half.
Something like that.
Yeah, but I think that's on both of us, or you can put it on me.
Okay, we'll do that.
Yeah. I think it's actually seeing all the people that do the jobs that we do, and,
Sure.
and communicating with them, because I've run different eDiscovery organizations here, whether it be we used to have this thing called Calsum, which became E3, and then we have ACEDS, and we have all these different organizations, and bar none, the best lunches we had were when people felt comfortable and they didn't have these the fancy cameras that are watching us right now.
Sure.
When we had these roundtables and we said, "Hey, Brian, what's going on with you?
Right.
What's working, and frankly, what's not working?" And I think those discussions really inform where there are either gaps in the products or in the process that we need to work on. And for sure, there is a small amount of feeling better that it's not just me that's not able to do this, because I'd love to say that I'm perfect, but I think many people will scream from the mountaintops that's not the case. But leaving that aside, I do think it's understanding where the gaps might exist, and then where we can sort of build to fill those gaps in. And again, it's the technologies that will help that, but I think it's the people in the process, and talking with the people about the process is something that I really enjoy. Building out systems like I talked about before, very cool. The idea of having a need that you can actually fulfill, and frankly, by bringing in, maybe this is a good, plug for my firm, but I mean, when we bring new associates in, I tell them, hey, good news, maybe bad news, but good news, you get to come to the firm and practice law, right? You're not going to be doing sort of mundane tasks all the time, which again, there are many mundane tasks that I do, and maybe those will have some agents that help me with that. But I think the important part is that you get to come practice law and actually do the things, as opposed to sort of doing all the peripheral things. So it's talking that through with people at events like this that I really enjoy and reconnect. And it's, oh man, your kids are how old now? There's some of that, which is really enjoyable, and is the human side of these things. Because, the hard part is understanding how the new generative AI technology is going to be implemented at your firm in a cost-effective manner, such that you can deliver results for clients.
Right.
The easier thing is talking that through with the people that are doing that, and understanding that, and having the same experiences.
Right. I agree that it's really people driven, once you get past the technology, where it's information from our client.
Yep.
It's the community of the people that doing the work. And it's understanding that the problems that are going to be generated for us are from other people, right?
Yeah.
Doing trying to do their work, right? So I think that all kind of plays together, and the people aspect of it, I love managing people and love building eDiscovery teams over the years. So I think that's 100% true. So, well, thank you very much. I know you're deeply invested in the playoffs. So who do you think is going to win the World Series before we end this?
If I say anybody besides the Milwaukee Brewers, I will get in trouble with my kids.
Okay.
How about you? What's your?
I'd love to see the Brewers win as well.
And who do you think the Brewers would play?
Oh, geez. Probably Toronto.
You think Toronto?
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. And we can pull this clip out if the Brewers do fall down.
Was that edited to the Phillies and somebody else?
Yeah, but I mean, I will say that we're up 2-0 on the Cubbies.
Sure.
And part of why I told you my voice is a little hoarse today is that I was screaming, rooting on the Brewers yesterday at Miller Park. I still can't say American Family Field.
Sure.
At Miller Park, but it was fun. And playoff baseball has a, maybe we'll end it on a eDiscovery thing. Playoff baseball has sort of an intensity around, a big case that has things going on where I do think the minute details, making sure you tie those up, are super important. I mean, it's way in the weeds, but the Cubs second baseman, I feel bad saying this directly, but he might be the best second baseman in baseball. And he booted a ball early in game 1, which I was shocked that he did.
For sure.
And I've booted that ball before at work. I'm not proud to admit that, but it's kind of how you react to that, right? So, I mean, you pick yourself back up and you figure it out. And again, we're going to, talk to people this week, I'm sure, about many home runs, but also many errors and how we can try and have more home runs than errors.
For sure. Thank you, Chris, for being here. And we'll talk to you next time.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Brian.
Thank you.